Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Money Stylist podcast. And the title of this show is...
Fuck off.
It's not fuck off. It's You're a Bitch, Jen. No, it's not that either. It's Keep Your Fears to Yourself. And we're going to take a trip.
We're taking a trip down memory lane.
This podcast already started off a wee bit aggressive, but that's all right.
Look, here's why.
Because I'm so hangry.
Danielle is hungry. She's having issues. I think my feet are bleeding. I'm so tired. I've been standing so much. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Dude, we just finished a class a couple days ago, and
it was a good class.
I've been teaching classes for almost 4 years, and I've never experienced a class like this. You've been doing it longer, and I can't speak for you, but I've never seen a class like this. It was one of the first
classes out of the gate that, like, there was everybody bonds, because the first thing we do when we open up our classes, we were like, why are you here? Because pretty hair is not enough. Grow your social media is not enough. Like,
money is not enough.
Like, why are you here? Why did NBR speak differently to you? Why are you here? And it, like, we kind of take them kind of dark real fast. I mean, Ani opens it up and she shares like some vulnerable moments for her and what was her why and that kind of thing. So it kind of like immediately like guts people. And then they're like, it's cool because all of a sudden they're like, wow, I feel so safe to like share why I'm here. But it's because of the frame that we set before of our classes. But this was like the first class that I just felt like they were like ready to throw down for one another.
Well, we sent them out to do a live video. And when they came back, I think they found a Coke dealer outside because they came back.
They were amped. Like, I was like, where did you guys go?
They were either shooting steroids or they were snorting Coke, like, because they came back
like
fucking
jazzed. Adrenaline junkies. That's how they came back.
Yeah.
Like,
and
they were like, rah!
Well, and one of the girls in the class, she's like, I just want to ask you guys, like, how do you get past it? And we're like, well, get past what? She's like, she's like, my family, they don't support me in this. They this and that, blah, blah. And Danielle started speaking about, bear in mind, I'm normally the potty mouth yelling one. Hold up.
So sometimes like I'll tell a story, but sometimes I relive a story when I'm telling a story. And that's the moment I had.
I can tell. So Danielle, she's like, hey, I get it. You guys know her story, when I started and I had to block all my family on social media. And Danielle goes, and then we were all on vacation and my family's like, well, I wish I knew what Danielle was doing, but you blocked us. And Danielle in front of 20 of our new students. And she goes, yeah, that's because you're a bitch, Jen. And I like froze. I look at the other trainer.
I didn't mean to be so aggressive. And I was like, maybe I'm not quite over that yet.
I almost peed myself. It was so funny. I've never heard you speak like that in a class, but I literally want that on a shirt.
But that's cool. Yeah, I know. The next day you're like, can we get that shirt? I'm like, only you and I will think it's funny, but yes, we can get that shirt. But the thing is like, I hear this in so many events, where you can see people, like, we ask them to do something as simple as a live, or like do daily 4, or like post something on social media, or do just put themselves out there, and they're immediately like, okay, well, my grandma's gonna watch, and my dog's gonna watch, and my best friend's sister's gonna watch.
My family doesn't support.
They don't know. They're gonna think I'm crazy. They're gonna think I've joined a cult. They're gonna think I've lost my mind. They don't support me. Like, what do I do? And like, you can see them, like, they don't even have to say anything.
They're spiraling.
They're spiraling like so fast. And we even talked about spiraling on our last podcast, where it's like, that was a funny one, by the way. But it's like they immediately assume that, like, oh my God, everyone's going to disown me, and that's too scary, and I'm deaf. And so they're literally like, I can't do this. They like cripple up in a ball, and they're like an emotional ball. Like, we can see it on their faces, and they literally are like, I'm not doing a live. I'm not.
Well, and even kind of like on that same note, but almost the flip side, this artist that was talking to us, her family had actually said something that they did not support her in this. They did not agree. They thought it was wrong. They were like really dragging her through the mud. And I hear that, and I'm like, you have to stop. Anyone, look, I'm going to say this. If you have someone in your life and they are trying something new and they're building a business, they're getting a new hobby, and all you can do is say, but what if this happened, and what if this, and what if you fail, and what if, and that's stupid, it's never going to work.
Stop it.
No offense, fuck you. You have to stop projecting your fears onto someone else. Just because you're afraid of failing doesn't mean that no one else should try.
And you know what? Even if you're like, that's a bad idea, I look at, like, like say for example, if somebody came to me and they're like, hey, I'm gonna open a gym or a salon or whatever, and I'm like, whoa, I can see like 75 things going wrong, I would still never be like, whoa, what about this and this and this? I'd be like, you should do it, because even if they do fail or fuck up, that's how they learn and figure it out. So good news, bad news is like, you can't learn and grow and become a better businessman or woman if you don't fuck up.
Well, and then it's crazy because people will come to us, like as humans, someone will come to us and you're like, I'm excited to do this. And they're like, you shouldn't do that because of these reasons. And why is it that we take their word as gospel? Yeah. We are more likely to listen to a negative person and a naysayer say, don't do that. It's a bad idea. It's never going to work. You're going to be ridiculed. You're never going to succeed. Right. Than listen to someone being like, I have no idea how that's going to turn out, but you should try it.
Right. And you know what's so crazy is people that have like experienced growth in business, they would be like, oh, that's great, you should try it. But somebody who's never actually tried it, they're the ones typically that are like, don't do it. And you're like, but wait, have you done that in business? Well, no. Well, then why the fuck would I take advice from somebody who doesn't have the same goals or aspirations as I do? And they're not even doing big shit in life.
And okay, look, that pisses me off so fucking bad, because, and something that we've said all the time is Danielle and I, like, we're aware we have put ourselves center stage. Like, we have made our lives very public. Like, everyone knows a lot of shit about us. And with Danielle building NBR and the Academy and the salon and like thousands of artists being trained, you don't get to come to her and give her advice if you're sitting in the nosebleeds. Yeah. You chose not to play, which means your opinion is now completely invalid. It's irrelevant. You don't get to have a fucking opinion. Right. So if you're in that place where you feel the need to criticize someone else, or if you're the person being criticized because you're trying to build something big, fuck those opinions, because they are just too scared to do anything else in their life, and that's okay. But you can't let them bring you down.
I think what's so hard is like if you're in a certain city, say it's a small town.
We hear that every 500 times class.
And I always bring up the reference. I'm like, listen, I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. Like, it is a very, very Mormon bubble. Nothing against Mormons, nothing against any of that. But like 8 out of 10 people are Mormon and everybody's blonde. Like, that's just how Salt Lake City is. And I like it and it's like a big city, but it's a small bubble, right? Yeah. So I always tell everybody, I'm like, you don't think that was hard for me? Like, I was raised Mormon. I decided to leave the church. I decided to literally, like, I was on the brink of divorce, going bankrupt. People were like talking about me, and I could have just said, okay, I'm going to just like stay here, divorce my husband, remarry, not build anything that I built, or I can tune out the noise. And only I know what's going to serve me and what's going to be best for me. So like when I have women or men come to me and they're like, okay, like, I don't know how to say this, but how do I like ignore the noise? I'm like, you ignore the noise and you do what's going to give you the best result. And guess what? If you fuck up, you'll learn from it.
So one of my clients actually listened to, I guess you and Garrett just did an episode on Date Your Wife of leaving the Mormon church and like how difficult that was. And I did not know this about my client. She used to be Pentecostal, which I don't know if you know anything about that. It is strict. Yeah. The women can't cut their hair. They have to wear long skirts, long sleeve. It is very, very, very strict. Right. And so her family, it's her husband, and I think they have like 5 kids. They're Pentecostal, but she is no longer. And she said, it was really interesting hearing about Danielle and Garrett talk about leaving the Mormon culture and what that was like. She goes, I didn't realize it was like so strict, like being Pentecostal. She goes, but it's crazy because I feel like my kids are such fucking hypocrites. And I was like, oh, I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, they're still Pentecostal. She goes, but I use that term very loosely. She goes, it was just my birthday. My husband and my best friend, like, we all went to Vegas. We partied. She's like, we drank, but we weren't like fucked up. We really just spent the time eating and shopping and hanging out. She goes, my kids didn't even text me happy birthday. Aww. She goes, because they own a couple companies. She goes, one of my sons works for me and we pay him $500,000 a year. And all he said was, happy B-Day, mom, period, in a text. She goes, and I think, she goes, having heard the podcast, I realized, she goes, I really think it's because my kids look at me and they're like, oh, our mom lost it. She's not part of it. And she's kind
off the wagon.
And I asked her, well, do your kids drink? She's like, yeah. I was like, do they drink soda? She's like, yeah. I'm like, wait a motherfucking minute.
Hold that.
They expect you to follow the rules that they're not even following, and now they're judging you for not doing the shit that they don't do? Yeah. Where do you think you have a leg to stand on? Yeah. And that's something that we talk about all the time. Like, you have to lead from where you live. Anytime Danielle and I are like, don't do this, do this, do this, it's because we've done it.
Right.
We've stood in a place of like knowing like, hey, that's not going to work. Like try it. But we're telling you, take this path.
Right.
Because our students are trying to recreate the success. Hold on, damn it. They're trying to recreate the success that we have both found inside of doing hair.
Right.
So even like that perspective to me, when she told me that about her kids, I'm like, you'd be getting a pay cut so motherfucking fast. You can't even tell me happy birthday. Pay you $500,000 a year. You can't tell me happy birthday.
And I'm good with my family now. And I used to get so irritated because and even like, so recently Garrett's parents came and they visited, and his mom brought me a housewarming gift. It was a beautiful statue of Christ. And honestly, in the past, I probably would have been so triggered and been like, listen, bitch, I'm not going back to church.
I have to laugh. I'm sorry.
I'm like, thank you for the Jesus statue. I'll put that in the closet. And I literally, I know I've turned a corner because I was like, this is a beautiful statue, and it's like sitting in my front room. And I was like, okay, I can accept Jesus. That doesn't mean I'm like, she's saying you have to be Mormon. She's like sharing her love for the gospel through a statue, right? So she's like promoting her love. And like before I would be triggered, or when people would say like, I'm going to pray for you, I'd be like,
I just had this conversation today.
And I'm like, I don't need you to pray for me because I'm not broken. But then I realized like people, they genuinely care about you, and they're not praying for you because you're broken. They're praying for you because they love whatever their religion is, and they want you to experience their prayers, I guess you could say.
Here's the way I put this to a client of mine. Literally this morning, I just had this conversation, and she told me she's going through a really hard time right now because essentially her best friend of like 20 years, she goes, that's my frenemy now. And I'm like, oh, that's a bad place to be. And she's like, my husband and I, she's like, we're going through a really hard time financially, and we're not where we used to be. She's like, it's getting better. COVID like really hurt us. I'm like, I get it, man. She's like, and all of a sudden now this friend has become like a one-upper that she's like, oh, you're doing that. Oh, well, hair flip, I'm doing these things. She's like, it's become really like gross,
Yeah.
She goes, but
True color came through.
Yeah. And she goes, and I've really come to see like who is on my side when things are dark, and who was only ever our friend because we had money. She goes, and the biggest thing, she goes, it makes me so fucking mad when these people are like, I'll pray for you. She's like, don't pray for me. She was getting mad, and I was like, I'm going to call her Sally because I don't want to use your real name. But I was like, Sally, I get it. I said, but think about it this way. I go, I'm not religious either, so I get it, but I will say my mom prays for me all the time. And something that you have to realize is they're not saying that to like as like a placebo, like, oh, I'm praying for you. They're doing it because it's so important to them. That's how they show love.
Yes.
That's how they show they care. That's how they show like, I'm genuinely thinking about you, concerned for you. Like I'm not better because you're doing something wrong, but like I want things to get better. And that's what it means for them.
Right.
So while yes, sometimes you're like, fuck off with your prayer, they mean well.
They mean well.
They
yeah,
mean
totally.
well.
So you have to accept it for what it is and realize like I used to think like people are trying to fix me. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, and then I'm like, you know what? They're just passionate about it. It's like, it's funny because we have people inside the academy that are like raving fans, and they tell other artists like, you need to do NBR, you need to do NBR. And people are like, what is this cult, right? But it's because they've had so much success inside the academy that they like come to other artists and are like, let me save you. And you know what I mean? But they're not really trying to save them. They're trying to like share like their success. Like I've had so much success with this. I think you would too, but sometimes it comes across as like, hey, what you're doing doesn't work, so let me save you, right? And it kind of just circles back around to like be careful with who you take advice from, and understand that if they're doing something genuine to be like just sharing something with you and it's not negative, if somebody's praying for you, if they're like, hey, I think you would think the academy or whatever it is exciting, that's not something negative, right?
No. And even for me, because I have students, I mean, I feel like pretty frequently will actually message me and be like, I don't know why you popped in my head, but I'm sending you a prayer.
Yeah.
I've never been offended by that. I've never been annoyed by it, because I see that and I'm like, the fact that for whatever reason you're thinking about me, and you would take the time out of your day, and instead of praying for family or friends or neighbors, like you chose to pray for me, that's actually very, very touching and like heartwarming.
Right.
Because like I said, my mom and grandma, like they are knocking on God's door every day praying for us. Like, that's just what they do.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Like, this whole, like, I think be careful what you're triggered with and understand what comes from love and what comes from scarcity or what comes from just like
their own fear,
right? So don't be offended by people sending you love, but do be weary of those trying to put fear in your mind, doubt in your mind. And those are the people that you kind of have to cut off and distance yourself from.
Well, and something that we were talking about in this class as well, because the girl was like, one of the other students, this is where the class went sideways, man, not like in a good way. I don't know what happened, but this girl was like, well, what about like how do you like people that you were close with and then all of a sudden they like turn on you? I'm like, well, who? She's like, clients. And the room went from a level 2 noise to a 14 to the point where I was like, okay. You guys need to calm down. You're ready to like flip tables and fuck shit up. And they're like, yeah, fuck shit up. I'm like, no, not in this room. You're not. I'm like, whatever is happening, calm down. Like, they were ready to go to war with each other. But what we ended up telling the student is like, hey, we know it's hard, but you sometimes have to realize like, they may not have actually been as close to you as you think, because you will come to find in your life, there are people that support you when you feel like, when you're essentially, because a lot of artists come to us because they're like, I'm not making good money, I'm overworked, I'm underpaid, I'm fucking stressed out, like I'm at a breaking point, I am on a ledge, and people are like, no, keep doing it, you're fine. And the minute you're like, you know what, this actually doesn't work for me anymore, I'm gonna start doing something different, they're like, ugh. And so what we told the students is like, wait a minute, you care for me when I'm stressed out, I'm anxious, I'm overworked, I'm exhausted, I'm at a breaking point. But the minute I start to do something that takes me out of those negative feelings and my life is actually better, now you don't fucking care about me anymore? Well, what the hell is that?
Well, and I have to kind of call out the artist a little bit, because we've had this discussion in our class too, is artists are guilty of taking like service charges off the total. So they'll be sitting in the chair and they'll be like, oh, she just had surgery. She has a kid that's doing this and this and this. So when they go to ring them up, they're like, I'm going to take the toner off. I'm not going to charge him for this cut. I'm not going to charge him for this, whatever. And then one day they decide to, charge him full price. And the client's like, what the hell? And then they're like, you're a bitch, Karen. And you're like, but let me be clear, because you created these conditions where you're constantly giving your clients a deal. And then you're surprised when they turn on you and go somewhere else. But guess who created that condition?
Oh, you did.
You did. And so sometimes you're going to have clients that are going to leave based on whatever. And I learned this in my career. Like, clients used to leave and I'd be like, well, screw you, Karen. Like, well, I'm just using Karen as a name, but like, I'd be like, whatever, you're dead to me. You can't ever get on my books again. And now I'm like, God, that's so weird, Danielle. So now it's like, hey, if they choose to go somewhere else, that doesn't mean they might not come back. So for me, now my policy is like, hey, like if I don't see somebody, they drop off my books for a while, and then I want them to know, like, hey, the door is always open. Like, you don't need to feel weird. Whereas in the past, I'd be like, oh, you went to so-and-so that I trained that went to a different salon that now is dead to me. Well, you're dead to me too. And I was like, okay, that's weird, and you need to be the professional. So I always have to remind my artists too, like if you're saying your clients are like, they're like, oh, I don't care about you anymore. But you have to understand your boundaries and how you operated with them and take some accountability now for, Sarah or Karen or whoever being like, hey, whatever, you're like, I don't want to be on your books anymore.
For sure. And that can definitely be one of the circumstances that's happening. But I know, like, when I was joining BMS and I was starting to raise my prices and like restructure my business, I was very upfront with my clients. And I had a client look me in my face once and she's like, I sure hope I was talking about DKW in the salon in California and all these like fun things. And she's like, well, I sure hope you're not going to raise your prices to theirs. That's ridiculous. And I was just kind of like, I literally had the email written out that was going to go to my clients of like, hey, I'm raising my prices. Yeah. And when she got that email or text or whatever it was at this point, it was years ago, she texted me and was like, I want to cancel all of my appointments. I'll come back to you when my money tree grows.
So after her saying something like that, if she wanted to book later, would you let her?
You know what? Ooh, I'm gonna be a salty bitch. No, I wouldn't. And here's why.
Was she a good client? Was she like a pleasant person, or was it just that comment itself?
She was so here's the kind of person she was. She liked you as long as she got her way. Okay. The minute it was not exactly what she wanted, and I just mean like in life, and I can gauge it by the conversations. So to me, it's like, you know what? The fact that you treated me that way, which is fine. If
somebody says something like that to you, it's not the first time they've kind of had a jab. That was just probably that was probably just like the final straw that you're like, yeah, I'm done with you.
Well, and that's my thing, that at that point, like, if I'm raising my prices and you can no longer afford my services, don't take it out on me.
Yeah, don't be. Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things in life I can't afford that I'm not calling them going, how dare you raise your prices? Well, but that's my fucking problem.
Unfortunately, in our industry, because we are walked all over at times and we are trying to like barter and we are taking off toners and we are doing this, we've now taught the client that we're worth nothing, and they can respond that way to us.
And they treat us like nothing.
And they treat us like that. I had in my class, I'm like, you want to be treated like a hairstylist? Act like a hairstylist. You want to be treated like a businessman or woman? Act like a businessman or woman who does hair.
Yep.
And it's just crazy because I feel like with the Academy, we're really making an impact in our industry, like to be more professional. The best comment, one of the girls goes, yeah, they were like saying, why are you going to pay this much money for this class? Why don't you just, there's so many beaded methods, you can just YouTube it. And I was like, no wonder people think our industry is a fucking joke. Yeah.
Because you're YouTubing it.
I'm like, I'm sorry, did you get your hair license based off a series of YouTube events?
Oh, hello, doctor. I would like a nose job. Great. I saw a really great YouTube video last week.
Great.
What the fuck?
But like when she said that, I was like, do you know why our industry is talked about the way it is? And
look at the statement you just made.
I'm like, do you want to be that artist? And she's like, no. And I'm like, exactly. And that's why you're here. And that's why you need to ignore comments like that.
And that's why I feel that a lot of people, because I came from working in a suite, and working in a suite, there were actually a lot of women around me that we all had worked together in a salon before, but then like the salon closed and they all ended up working around me. And while I was doing like men's cuts, women cuts, kids cuts, colors, perms, like all the things, it was like camaraderie, like we're all in the shithole together.
Yeah.
But the minute I was like, I'm not doing men's or kids, now I'm not doing women, now actually like, I'm not even doing color.
Like whispers start.
Oh, it was the whisper to the point of like, she's gonna fail, she's not gonna be able to do it, she's not good enough. And part of me was like, bitch, I used to work at your salon, so why was I good enough to hire and now I'm not good enough to do it myself? So first off, you're being a dick. Second, like, hey, let's just address that. But it really put me, and I think that's what becomes hard. We're too afraid to go live because what if someone says something? We're too afraid to raise our prices because then
it's
what
scary
if someone...
to be alone. Like if you're in a salon where everybody's like, what is she doing? What's going on? Or even in a suite. I experienced the same thing in Utah. People are like, who does she think she is? She can't charge that. We're in a small town. Like what's going on? And I'm like it's to the point where I'd even like walk by their salons and they stop their suites and like everyone would like almost like and like no, like I'd be like waving and it was like
my favorite is when they
rolled
would
eyes. I was
pretend like they
oh
were on
my
their
God,
phone,
yeah,
and like slow down and look at you.
Like, but no, I literally got like scoffs and eye rolls. They're like, that girl, who does she think she is? And I was like, well, okay, this is weird. But it's so funny because I think and it's hard to be like the one person out of like 10 people that are like, well, she, and so it can be scary. But the thing is like, why I don't understand like if people just feel safe. Like they're like, hey, why would you want to leave our bubble? This is so awesome, right? Don't do that, you're going to fail. But really, they're feeling personally attacked because you don't want to do what they're doing, right?
Yes, because then they assume that if she doesn't want to do what I'm doing, that means she's saying
she thinks she's better than me.
What she is saying is that what I'm doing is bad and she's better than me.
She's better than me.
No, I'm just saying I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
That's all that is. I want to do something different. So why does there always have to be a villain and a bad guy? Why can it not just be you're doing the thing you want to do, I'm doing the thing I want to do?
Right.
Neither one of us are right or wrong. We just are.
I've always been the type of person though that like I'm very much like in my own little world. And I think that's why I've been able to even get to the level of success that I have. Yes, I had there was moments where I'm like, yeah, I left my religion, I left my family, I moved out of state. And that was even when I didn't even like my husband, didn't want to be married to him. Like I've never felt so alone in my life, like literally. But I'm also somebody who genuinely like just kind of like focuses on what I need to do, and I don't like drama. Like drama does not give me purpose in life. If anything, it gives me anxiety. It makes me want to curl up in a ball.
It takes too much time.
It takes too much time. It makes me sad. It makes me angry. I don't understand how I feel like some people love the drama because it gives them purpose because they don't have anything else going on, right? And they need that drama to give them a little bit of purpose and excitement in their life. But what if you took that, what if you reframed it and you're like, okay, I might have to put myself in an uncomfortable situation to get that kind of same high and to give me purpose, right? But it's hard to tell people that. You're like, listen, it's gonna be scary. But then once you like get out of your comfort zone and you start growing as an individual and you look at the person you used to be, you will never ever want to go back there. So why wouldn't you at least go for it? Why wouldn't you at least try to get uncomfortable? Like, it's so crazy to me when people aren't willing to do the smallest things and they're like, well, but I do want to own a salon. I'm like, you won't even do a live video. You want to own a salon and open a 20-chair salon. You won't even do a live video. If you can't do the simple, small shit, you'll never be ready for the big stuff. Like,
that's
you won't.
My favorite in class when they're like, can you tell us how you did it? We're like, yes, do these 4 things. And they're like, I don't want to do those.
It's too simple.
Can you tell me something else? We're like, no, if you want the results that we have had,
start here.
You must do these 4 things every day. They're like, I hear you. I don't want to do that. So tell me the next path. And I'm like, there's no other fucking path. There's no, you want us to tell you the secret? Yeah. The secret is there is no secret to success. The secret to success is just being consistent and doing the work. So that's why for me, when that one student that one time was like, I'm not doing that, I was like, let's take a fucking bet on if you're about to do this or not. Like, oh, you're in our class and you think you're going to look me in my fucking face and tell me no? No.
Well, and I had the conversation too. I was like, you guys are all here and you're in the right direction, and you obviously something spoke to you about my education. You're not just here. NBR is beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a great technique, but there was something inside my brand that spoke to you. So all I ask is that you go all in. Like, drop the ego. Like, just go all in. Don't be that person that buys the software but doesn't actually use the tool. Like, it's easy to pay for something. People think like, well, I invested $3,500 to be here. I'm like,
that's the easy
part.
You
did the easy part. Now you got to do the work. And guess what? It's not just do the work. I know you're a hard worker. Artists are hard worker. Yeah. Guess what part of doing the work is? Being uncomfortable and doing the shit that you don't know how to do. And I always feel like, I call it seasoned artists, but like, we get so stuck in our identity. We'll have women and men that have been doing hair for 15, 20 years, and they're like, oh, well, you know, we don't do it that way. I'm like, why are you here? I'm giving you simple steps to do. I get that you have your whole identity wrapped around who you are, and you've been doing hair for 20 years, and for you to like all of a sudden do a live, like you're so worried about what your clients are going to think and everything else. Like you've got to drop the ego. Like you've got to let it go in order to reach the next level. And I know my branding and my message spoke to you. That's why you're here.
And not only that, it's you obviously don't know everything if you came to this class.
But we have people like it's almost like there's like I've envisioned it like a window. Like there's a window and like we get in through the window and we connect with them and they're like, okay, I'm gonna come to the class, and then they put up the same damn wall, and they
lower the blinds. They're like, no, thank you.
And so I'm like, come on, let me in that window a little more. Like, let me in that window a little more. You know, you want to. There's a reason you're here. Like, follow that like intuition, your heart, whatever you want to call it. Like, let me back in to help you. You know what I mean? But
it's always a choice, and it's understanding that you're always going to be afraid. Number one, like. Fear never goes away regardless of how successful you are. There is always nerves and fear when it comes to doing something new. And 2, understanding that you growing will make other people uncomfortable and they will project their fears and their discomfort on you, but that doesn't mean you should stop, because here's what happens. Once you do reach that point, I don't believe in end games, but once you reach that first goal, that first peak, they're going to be like, I knew you could do it. Yeah. Everybody does that. Everybody goes from, that's a terrible idea, to, I knew you could do it. I always believed in you.
You're like, okay.
Yeah. They're too afraid to potentially risk failing to ever try. So that's my final thoughts. Danielle?
They're too uncomfortable. Wait, say that again?
They are too worried about being uncomfortable and failing to ever try.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my students, I'm like, and this can be my final thought, is I'm like, I know you, because we'll have a lot of students say, oh, I do want success. I do want money, but I feel selfish. Like, I'm like, why would you feel selfish? If you become more successful, think about maybe, like, money does change the game, right?
Yes, it does.
It does. Yeah. And I'm like, and if you become, a bigger person in business or whatever, imagine the impact you're going to have on your family. If you're not married, imagine the impact you might have on your community. Imagine you start your own team of stylists and the impact that you have on them. It's a domino effect of people that you're not affecting because you're not playing to the highest potential of yourself. And that's one of the things that I constantly, like, ask myself when I get to come uncomfortable. I'm like, Danielle, who needs this? Who needs this? And it's like I'm praying for these little souls that aren't really in the academy yet, but I'm like, I gotta keep pushing because there's more people that need to hear this, and there's more people that need to be impacted by this, and there's more people that this can help. And so for me, like if I feel like I'm again comfortable, I have to get myself a little bit uncomfortable because I know there's a whole nother group of people that I'm gonna have an impact on. So I always tell people, who are you not having an impact on by playing so small? Like you're not being selfish. If anything, you're being self-interested. That's gonna have a massive, massive impact if you choose it.
So guys, thank you for listening to Big Money Stylist Podcast. I feel like these 30 minutes always goes by
we
so
were
quick.
Spicy. Lots of efforts in this blend. But
I blame you, actually. You definitely started that. And normally it's me. I'm proud of this. This is Danielle.
Yeah, I'm really hangry, guys. I have a bikini competition in a couple weeks.
Hungry Danielle's a spicy Danielle.
I'm low carb, so the effort is just going.
So we are officially finished with all of our small classes for the entire year of 2021.
Are all the classes, is the last class sold out?
Well, by the time this comes out, there's only a couple seats left.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are not having any more small classes for 2021. We do have some surprises coming out later this year, which we are super excited about. But if you are interested in what we do and Natural Beaded Rose and DKW Styling Academy, go to nbr.education and go take a look. All the information's there.
See if there's something that sparks you.
We'll see you next time.